The Apocryphon of John 22 verses 3-5. And he, either demiurge, said to them, I am a jealous God, and there is no other God beside me. But by proclaiming this, he indicated to the angels who attended him that there exists another God. For if there were no other, of whom would he be jealous? Then the Father of the all looked down upon him and said, You are mistaken, Samuel, which means God of the blind. And he said, There exists an immortal man of light who was in existence before you, and who will appear among your model forms. He will trample you underfoot, and you will be cast away into your abyss, along with those who are yours. Let's start by breaking down one of the most mind-bending ideas in Gnosticism, the demiurge. Now, this isn't your standard creator of the universe figure. In fact, the demiurge turns the entire concept of a benevolent, omnipotent God on its head. According to Gnosticism, the demiurge isn't God at all, at least not the true one. He's an imposter, and not just any imposter, a deeply flawed, arrogant being who thinks he's the only God. What we're dealing with here is a cosmic dictator, a false God who constructed the world as a prison to trap our divine essence in the muck of material existence. Think about it. The world we live in, the plants, the oceans, the stars, even our bodies, they're all the creation of this lesser deity. And no, it's not good. The Gnostics saw this material world as fundamentally corrupt, a mistake. The demiurge may have power over it, but his power comes from ignorance and hubris, not wisdom or love. He's like a ruler sitting on a throne he doesn't deserve, constantly trying to maintain control over something he doesn't fully understand. This isn't the God of Genesis who looked at his creation and said it was good. According to Gnosticism, the demiurge didn't even know what he was doing. He was an accidental creator, crafting a universe full of chaos and suffering. His greatest trick? Convincing humanity that he was the true source of life. The Gnostics were onto something radically different here, a worldview where the physical world is a trap and the demiurge is the jailer. Let's talk names, because this false god goes by many, but the one that stands out is Yaldabaoth. Yeah, Yaldabaoth, a monstrous figure often depicted with the face of a lion and the body of a serpent. That's no coincidence. That imagery paints a picture of a being that's savage, primal, and deeply imperfect. Yet he thinks he's supreme. This is key. His arrogance blinds him to the existence of the true God, the ultimate source of light and spirit. And that's where things get really wild. We are part of that light, fragments of the divine trapped in the demiurge's flawed creation. Unlike traditional Christianity, where the world is seen as inherently good, created by a loving God, Gnosticism flips that on its head. The material world is a prison. Our bodies, chains. Our souls, sparks of the true divine reality that have been imprisoned here by Yaldabaoth. It's a radical reinterpretation of everything we think we know. Gnostics weren't satisfied with the idea that we should just accept this world for what it is. They saw through it. They believed that this world was a distraction, a cage, and that the real truth lies beyond it, waiting to be uncovered. Now, this might sound outrageous to some, blasphemous even, but that's exactly what makes Gnosticism so compelling. It challenges the very foundations of the world order, religious doctrines, and the nature of God himself. What if the creator we've been worshiping all along is the very one holding us down? What if salvation doesn't come from obeying the creator, but from escaping his creation? That's the core of Gnostic thought. Knowledge, or gnosis, is the key to liberation. It's not about faith in the demiurge. It's about waking up to the realization that the demiurge is a tyrant, and the true divine essence lies beyond him, within us. This isn't a passive spirituality, it's a rebellion against the false god, a path of inner awakening that frees the soul from the chains of the material world. This narrative hits hard. It doesn't just contradict the story of a benevolent God, it suggests that our entire reality is a cosmic prison, and we've been misled for millennia. This is what makes the demiurge such a controversial figure even today. It forces us to question, who is the real creator? What is the real nature of the universe? And are we truly free, or are we captives in a world created by a God who is not God at all? Let's dive deeper into one of the most explosive ideas in Gnosticism, the concept of the material world as a cosmic prison. This isn't a poetic metaphor, it's a fundamental belief that the world we know, everything we touch, everything we experience, is a trap designed to keep us blind to the truth. The Gnostics were crystal clear about this. They saw the material world not as a creation of divine beauty, but as a construct, a carefully designed illusion meant to keep our spirits chained. In one of the most famous Gnostic texts, the Apocryphon of John, the world is described as a shadow cast by Iodebarth, the demiurge. A shadow, a mere imitation of the higher spiritual realm. This world is not the real deal. It's a flawed, corrupted version of reality. And that means everything you know, everything you've been told about life, could be nothing more than a lie. In mainstream religious thought, we're often told to find peace, joy, and fulfillment in the world around us. The Gnostics? They didn't buy it for a second. They saw this world as a place of entrapment for the soul. And the worst part, most people don't even know they are trapped. The material world is so seductive, so immersive, that it convinces us that it's all there is. In the Gnostic text, the Gospel of Truth, there's a powerful passage that captures this. The world came about through a mistake. It brought forth forgetfulness. That's right, the world itself is an error, and it exists to make us forget. Forget who we truly are, forget our divine origin, and forget that there's something beyond this physical realm. The material world acts like a fog, dulling our senses, keeping us locked in the cycle of birth, life, and death without ever realizing the truth. This prison, though, isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, spiritual, the systems of power, authority, and religion in the material world. According to the Gnostics, they're part of the problem, designed to reinforce the illusion. Iodebarth and his archons, his servants, run the show, creating structures that keep humanity in line. In the Apocryphon of John, the archons are described as rulers who create fate and imprison souls. They're cosmic jailers, keeping the divine spark within us trapped in the cages of flesh and bone. So what do the Gnostics propose as the way out? Knowledge. Gnosis. Not just intellectual knowledge, but deep spiritual understanding of the truth that this world is a false creation, and that the true divine realm exists beyond it. The only way to break free from the prison is to recognize the illusion for what it is. This is why Gnostic texts often emphasize the need for inner awakening. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "The kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. And when you know yourselves, then you will be known." It's a direct challenge to the material world, a call to turn inward and discover the truth hidden within. Now, this idea that the world is a prison goes directly against everything we're taught to believe. Religious institutions, governments, and social systems are built on the idea that this world is where we belong. Gnosticism cuts through that illusion like a knife. The Gnostics were rebels, spiritual insurgents who rejected the dominant narrative. They weren't interested in making the best of this world, they were interested in escaping it altogether. And that's what makes this idea so radical, even today. Now let's talk about Sophia, one of the most critical, yet often misunderstood, figures in Gnostic mythology. If you thought the demiurge was controversial, wait until you hear about how Sophia sets the entire cosmic drama into motion. She's not just a passive bystander in all this. She plays a central role in the Gnostic creation story, and honestly, her story flips everything we think we know about creation on its head. Sophia, whose name literally means wisdom, wasn't just another divine entity. She was a key figure within the pleroma, the fullness of divine light and truth. In Gnostic thought, the pleroma is the realm of perfection where the true God resides, far beyond the reach of the material world. But here's where it gets intense. Sophia, driven by her desire to understand the unknowable, acted independently. Without the consent of the true God, she created the demiurge. That's right, Sophia's fall is what sets the stage for the creation of the material world and all the chaos that follows. In the Apocryphon of John, it's written Sophia wanted to create something, but without the Spirit, and her work became a product in the matter. This is crucial. Sophia's act wasn't evil, but it was a mistake. Her creation of the demiurge was a product of her isolation from the rest of the divine realm, and what emerged was flawed. The demiurge, Iodebarth, came into being as a malformed, ignorant being, unaware of the true God and the pleroma. He believes he's the only God, and Sophia's role in creating him is shrouded in both guilt and regret. But let's not overlook Sophia's complexity. She's a figure who embodies both light and shadow. On one hand, she's the personification of wisdom. On the other, her independent actions lead to the birth of the being who traps humanity in the material world. The Gnostics didn't see her as evil, but as a tragic figure, a being who longed to create, to know, to reach beyond her limits, and in doing so brought about an imperfect creation. It's almost Shakespearean in its scope. A divine being whose curiosity and ambition lead to unintended consequences. Despite her mistake, Sophia's story doesn't end in despair. In fact, it's her continued presence and influence that offers a path to redemption. In the Pistis Sophia, a key Gnostic text, Sophia prays for deliverance from her fall, acknowledging her error, but also striving for reconciliation with the higher divine realms. "Save me, O light, for evil thoughts have entered into me," she pleads, showing that even in the Gnostic worldview, there's a sense of hope and recovery. She seeks to return to the light, and through her, humanity can also find a way back to the divine. Sophia's journey is profound because it reflects a key Gnostic belief. Even in the midst of a flawed creation, there's still a path to transcendence. Sophia's struggle isn't just cosmic, it's personal, a reflection of the human condition. We, too, are caught between the material and the spiritual, between ignorance and wisdom, between creation and destruction. Sophia's fall is a mirror to our own fall, but it's also a reminder that wisdom, true wisdom, comes from recognizing our mistakes, seeking knowledge, and striving for something greater. What's so revolutionary about this is the role that a feminine divine figure plays in the Gnostic story. In many traditional religious narratives, feminine figures are often secondary or passive. Not here. Sophia's actions, her independence, her wisdom, and her error, all of these are central to the Gnostic understanding of the cosmos. She's not sidelined, she's at the heart of the story. And that's a powerful shift in the way we think about divinity, creation, and the forces that shape the universe. Now, let's get into what the Gnostics had to say about us, humanity. The way they saw it, humans aren't just passive participants in the material world. We're trapped here. And our true essence, it's not what we've been led to believe. Gnosticism teaches that within each of us is a spark of the divine, a fragment of the true God, but we're imprisoned by our physical bodies, stuck in this flawed material world created by the demiurge. So, if you've ever felt like you don't quite fit in this world, the Gnostics would say, yeah, that's because you don't. Let's take this deeper with some powerful Gnostic texts. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "If they say to you, 'Where did you come from?' say to them, 'We came from the light, the place where the light came into being of its own accord and established itself.'" This is essential. The light is the true divine essence, and that's where we really come from. We're not products of this material world. We're not mere flesh and bone. We're beings of light, trapped in these limited, decaying bodies, forced to live in a world that constantly pulls us away from that truth. In Gnostic thought, this is the great cosmic tragedy. Humanity is like a prisoner with no memory of the crime, locked in a cell they don't know they're in. We've forgotten our origins in the divine light, and instead we've been conditioned to believe that we belong in this world, that we're meant to live out our lives following the rules of the demiurge, bowing to a system that was never designed to elevate us spiritually. The Gnostics saw right through this illusion. The Apocryphon of John gives us another insight. He cast humanity into great distraction and into forgetfulness. He became strong and established his power through himself alone, and in his arrogance he dwelt in it. The demiurge deliberately distracts us, keeping us busy, keeping us focused on material desires, keeping us ignorant of our true origin. It's a cosmic power play. The more we're wrapped up in the material world, the less likely we are to recognize the spark of divinity inside us. This might sound harsh, but think about how it plays out in everyday life. We're told that success is about accumulating wealth, gaining status, achieving physical comfort, but what if all of that is just a distraction? What if, instead of pursuing things in this world, our real mission is to wake up to the truth of our divine origin and break free from this material prison? The Gnostics weren't just talking about an abstract philosophical idea here. They were talking about a very real, urgent need for humanity to remember who we truly are. Here's the radical part. The Gnostics didn't believe that salvation came from outside, from some external deity who would swoop in and save us. No, they believed salvation came from within. It's about knowledge, gnosis, the recognition of the divine light within ourselves. It's not about faith in the demiurge system, it's about realizing that we are not part of this world. In the Gospel of Philip, it's written, "You are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth." Know yourselves and you shall be known. This isn't about conforming to the expectations of society or religion. It's about self-knowledge. Only by recognizing the divine spark within can we transcend the limitations of the material world. This is what makes Gnosticism so subversive. It doesn't say that we need to follow the rules, be good, and wait for divine judgment. It says that the system itself, this world, our physical existence, the very order of things, is a deception. And the only way to break free is through knowledge of the truth. Not faith in an external God, not obedience to a church or state, but an internal awakening that reveals the divine spark within each of us. Let's shift the focus to Eldebarth, also known as the demiurge, and how Gnosticism redefines everything we think we know about God. We've already established that Eldebarth is not the true God, but now let's talk about the real consequences of this claim. The idea that the God responsible for creating the world is actually a lower, ignorant being, well, that's the kind of thing that rattles centuries of religious doctrine. Eldebarth isn't just a bad creator, he's a tyrant who actively seeks to keep humanity in the dark. In the Apocryphon of John, Eldebarth is described as a being who boasted greatly and said to his archons, "I am God and there is no other God beside me." Think about that arrogance for a second. This is the being who claims to be the one true God, but in reality he's unaware of the higher divine realm, the pleroma. He doesn't know about the real God, and yet he's so full of himself that he thinks he's the ultimate power. It's a cosmic level of hubris. Eldebarth doesn't just rule over the material world, he deceives it. And by extension, he deceives us, the very beings trapped in this flawed creation. The Gnostics didn't mince words when it came to Eldebarth. In the hypostasis of the archons, he's referred to as the blind God, and for good reason. His blindness is symbolic of his ignorance. He cannot see beyond his own creation, beyond the material world, and yet he demands worship, obedience, and submission. It's an abuse of power on a divine scale. Eldebarth rules through deception, keeping humanity chained to this world, ensuring we never realize the truth about our divine origins. His not guiding humanity toward enlightenment is keeping us in a state of spiritual amnesia. What makes this even more disturbing is that Eldebarth created archons, rulers or entities that act as his enforcers. These archons serve to maintain the illusion, making sure the world remains under his control. In the Gospel of Judas, the archons are described as beings who keep the soul bound, preventing us from discovering the light within. They are the agents of suppression, ensuring that the spark of divinity within us stays buried beneath layers of material distractions and ignorance. The Gnostics weren't just pointing at some abstract spiritual problem, they were saying that the very fabric of reality has been twisted by a false god and his minions. Now let's get something straight. This isn't some battle of equals. Eldebarth and his archons may control the material world, but they are fundamentally inferior to the true divine source. They operate out of ignorance, not wisdom, and that ignorance is dangerous because it perpetuates the idea that the material world is all there is. Eldebarth is claimed to be the only God is a lie, a cosmic fraud. The Gnostics saw this world as a battleground for the human soul, where Eldebarth and his archons constantly try to keep us blind to the higher reality. The power of this narrative is that it forces a complete rethinking of traditional theology. If Eldebarth is not the true God, then the systems and structures that claim to represent God, whether they be religious institutions, political systems, or social orders, could also be seen as part of the deception. The Gnostics didn't just challenge the nature of divinity, they questioned the entire order of the world. Eldebarth is the archetype of a false ruler, and by extension, anything that mirrors his rule could be suspect. This idea shakes the very foundation of authority itself. So what does this mean for humanity? It means that breaking free from Eldebarth's control isn't just a spiritual journey, it's an act of defiance. In Gnostic terms, salvation doesn't come from obeying the creator of this world, it comes from rejecting him. The true path to liberation lies in recognizing Eldebarth for what he is, a false god who rules through lies. In the Gospel of Truth, it says he is ignorant, darkness surrounds him. That's the crux of it. Eldebarth is a god of darkness, and only by seeking the light can we escape his grasp. Let's get into something that will truly shake the foundations of mainstream religious thought, the Gnostic view of Jesus. This isn't the Jesus most people know, the one from Sunday school or the traditional Bible. No. The Gnostic Jesus is entirely different, more of a radical, mystical figure than a conventional savior. He didn't come to save humanity from their sins through his death and resurrection. In fact, in Gnostic texts, Jesus isn't here to be sacrificed on our behalf. He's here to deliver a completely different message, a message of awakening. In Gnosticism, Jesus isn't the son of the demiurge or a savior sent by this false god. He's a messenger from the true, hidden God, the one far beyond the material world. His mission wasn't to redeem us from our sins, but to bring Gnosis, the knowledge that would free us from the prison of the material world. It's not about salvation from sin, but liberation from ignorance. Take the Gospel of Thomas, one of the key Gnostic texts. It contains sayings of Jesus, but they're not the familiar teachings about turning the other cheek or loving your neighbor. Instead, these sayings focus on self-knowledge, inner awakening, and breaking free from the illusion of the material world. Jesus says, "Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death." This isn't about physical death, it's about spiritual death, the death of being trapped in ignorance, blind to the divine spark within us. In this context, Jesus is telling us that by understanding his teachings, by gaining Gnosis, we can transcend the material world and return to the divine realm. Now, in the Gospel of Judas, we see another mind-blowing take on Jesus. First off, Judas isn't the villain here. He's not the betrayer who handed Jesus over to be crucified. Instead, Judas is the only one who truly understands Jesus' mission. In this text, Jesus says to Judas, "You will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me." What does that mean? Well, Gnostics viewed the body, this physical form we live in, as a prison, a garment of flesh that hides our true divine selves. So when Jesus says Judas will sacrifice the man that clothes me, he's saying that Judas will help free him from his material body, allowing his true spiritual self to transcend the world of the demiurge. In Gnostic belief, Jesus didn't come to establish a new religion or create a system of rules for people to follow. He came to help humanity remember who they truly are. In the Gospel of Truth, Jesus is described as the one who brought knowledge of the Father. That's key. Jesus wasn't about obedience to laws or blind faith in dogma. He was about revealing the hidden truth of our divine origins. He taught that this material world, the world of the demiurge, is a deception, and only by understanding this can we free ourselves. What's even more striking is that in Gnosticism, the crucifixion of Jesus isn't the central event. In traditional Christianity, the crucifixion and resurrection are everything, the ultimate sacrifice for the sins of the world. But in Gnostic texts like the second treatise of the Great Seth, Jesus is portrayed as almost laughing at the idea of the crucifixion. It reads, "I did not die in reality, but in appearance. It was another, Simon, who bore the cross in his place. It was another upon whom they placed the crown of thorns." To the Gnostics, the crucifixion wasn't an act of salvation, it was part of the illusion of the material world. The true Jesus, the spiritual being, couldn't be touched by the physical suffering of the cross because he transcended it. What does this mean for how we understand Jesus today? In Gnosticism, Jesus isn't a sacrificial lamb, he's a guide, a revealer of hidden truths. He didn't come to pay for humanity's sins, but to teach us how to escape the trap of the material world. This view radically alters the entire framework of what salvation means. It's not about being forgiven or saved from damnation. It's about waking up to the truth of who we really are and reclaiming our divine nature. And that's the core of why the Gnostic Jesus is so controversial. He's not here to save you by dying on a cross. He's here to tell you that you don't need saving at all. You need awakening. In the Gospel of Philip it says, "Ignorance is the mother of all evil, and knowledge is the path to life." This is the Gnostic message in a nutshell. Ignorance of our true nature is the real sin, and the knowledge, gnosis, that Jesus brings is the path to spiritual freedom. This idea that Jesus didn't come to establish a church, didn't die to pay for our sins, and didn't rise physically from the dead, it challenges everything mainstream Christianity teaches. It puts the power of salvation not in the hands of a church or a priesthood, but in the hands of each individual. It's up to you to find the truth, to seek the hidden knowledge that will set you free. And that's a far more personal, empowering, and let's be honest, dangerous idea than the traditional narrative. It places the responsibility for salvation squarely on our own shoulders, not in the hands of some distant authority. Why so many creation stories? Why do we have these multiple, competing narratives about the beginning of everything, from Genesis, Psalms, Proverbs, and Isaiah to the radical Gnostic accounts? And what does this reveal about the nature of the divine, about creation itself, and about us as human beings trapped in this material world? First, let's look at one of the core ideas in Gnosticism, that there is not one single creation story that tells the whole truth. Instead, there are layers of creation myths, each revealing different facets of reality. In the Apocryphon of John, it's made clear that creation is a multi-layered process, with each layer becoming further removed from the true divine source. The material world, the physical reality we live in, is the furthest from the divine light, and because of this, it's filled with imperfection and suffering. But here's the kicker. Even within the imperfections, there are glimpses of truth, and the Gnostics believe these multiple stories each contain parts of the puzzle. Take the traditional Christian creation story from Genesis. It presents a world that was good and created by a benevolent God. But then compare that with the Gnostic view where the material world is created by the ignorant demiurge, who is himself a mistake. Two vastly different accounts, but both tell us something about the human experience, our longing for order, meaning, and connection to something beyond this material existence. The multiple creation accounts within the Bible itself also seem to acknowledge this. In Psalms, we see God actively battling chaos. In Proverbs, we see creation happening through wisdom, chokmah, a feminine force working alongside the divine. And in Gnosticism, creation is framed as an ongoing struggle between ignorance and knowledge, between darkness and light. The question then becomes, why does the Bible include these multiple, sometimes contradictory creation stories? The Gnostics would argue that it's because no single story can capture the full scope of the divine mystery. Creation is far more complex than any one narrative can describe. This is where Gnosticism offers something profoundly different. It's not about which story is right or wrong. It's about realizing that every creation story is a reflection of a deeper truth, the truth that we are not from this world, that our souls originate from a higher divine reality, and that our purpose is to return to that light. In the Gospel of Truth, the idea of creation as an ongoing process is emphasized. The Father, incomprehensible in his essence, sent his reflection to the aeons to restore what had been lost. This suggests that creation isn't a one-time event. It's continuous, unfolding as we awaken to the truth of our divine origins. Every creation story, from Genesis to Gnostic texts, is a fragment of a larger, ongoing cosmic drama where the real battle is not between good and evil, but between knowledge and ignorance. We're not just passive observers in this process, we're active participants. The Gnostics saw humanity's role as one of awakening. In their view, the purpose of these competing creation stories wasn't to divide us into camps of right and wrong, but to provoke deeper thought, to challenge us to look beyond the surface. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says the kingdom of God is within you and all around you. This is key. Creation is happening within us. The battle between ignorance and knowledge, between the demiurge and the true God, is unfolding inside each of us every day. We have a divine spark that needs to be reclaimed. That's the Gnostic message. What does this mean for how we understand the Bible and the world today? It means that every creation story, whether from Genesis, Gnosticism, or other ancient texts, offers a piece of the truth. We live in a world of layers, and our job is to see through those layers, to question what we've been told, and to seek out the divine light that lies beyond the material world. This is a direct challenge to the traditional religious structures that tell us to obey, to conform, and to accept the world as it is. The Gnostics offer a radically different view, that the world is a shadow, a deception, and that our true purpose is to wake up to the higher reality. So why so many creation stories? Because creation isn't simple. It's messy, it's layered, it's full of contradictions, just like our lives. The Gnostics knew this and they embraced it, offering a vision of the world where the ultimate truth isn't something handed down from above, but something discovered from within. In their view, salvation doesn't come from outside, it comes from gnosis, from self-knowledge, from realizing the divine light inside of us. In conclusion, these multiple creation accounts, whether biblical or Gnostic, invite us to dig deeper. They are not just stories, they are calls to action, challenges to awaken to the truth. The Gnostics dare to see beyond the physical, beyond the rules, and beyond the systems of power. They weren't satisfied with the simple answers, and neither should we be. The divine spark is within each of us, waiting to be ignited. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this deep dive into the Gnostic creation story. If this video sparked some new thoughts or even challenged your views, we'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you found this interesting. And as always, God bless you all.